Hello! Welcome to another episode of the Shellin' Show. Calling something like a show, I kind of wonder if it's a bit antiquated, a bit outdated. Honestly, my last name's Shelland, and it just flowed, and that's why I picked it. But you know what? It doesn't matter because y'all are here. Y'all are watching, listening. It's been a hell of a hump day. Is today Wednesday? I don't even know if today's Wednesday. I thought it was Tuesday all day today. So it's just been a hell of a day. Busy as hell. And yeah, lots of fun. Fall is coming in Minnesota, and it sucks. So if you live south of me, which is most likely you do, shit's coming. Okay. I was bitching about the pumpkin spice coming too early because it was August. No, it makes sense now. Yeah, I mean, they should only sell it at dusk because fall sets in at about 7 o'clock here. But it does totally make sense there. That is one thing I have come to realize. Dunkin' Donuts, I do apologize for giving you guys shit for bringing it out so early, but totally understandable here. Unpopular opinion, I saw this on the internet and I agree. Pumpkin spice is not the flavor of fall. It is apple cider. Apple cider is the fall flavor. All right. We're getting back on topic here. We are going to be tuning into, it's your opinion, man, to NPR here.
Wise County, which is in the southwest corner of Virginia. And a lot of cities and counties in that area are also suing Purdue Pharma and other drug companies. For example, the regional jail population has more than doubled in the 14 years since it was built. Wise County's spending on incarceration has more than tripled in the past decade. And then, of course, there are costs associated with running the courts and foster care and health care, not to mention the lives lost to overdose death and incarceration.
You spent time with a bunch of people out there. I want to talk about two of them. One of them was like a sheriff or a cop, right?
Right.
Yeah.
An undercover narcotics officer. We followed him over the course of about 2 years. He had been in the lumber business, but yeah, he said that he had trouble finding enough workers. So he became an undercover cop, decided to fight the forces that he believed were contributing to bringing down his business.
And he had trouble finding workers in part because of the opioid crisis?
He said he had trouble finding workers that were sober and would show up to work on time, pass a drug test.
Right. Speaking of that kind of person, the other guy you spent a lot of time with, I forget his name. He's the guy who went in and out of jail. Remind me.
Joey Ballard.
Yeah.
We followed him over a couple of years as he struggled with substance use disorder. He had started on pain pills in the 90s when he was in high school and right after high school. And he was sober when I first met him, but then he relapsed and was in and out of jail. Had switched from pain pills to methamphetamine, which is what he was on most recently.
There was a scene in one of the episodes of that season where you were on the phone with him and he was in jail, right?
Right, and actually he's still in jail. He is waiting to be moved to an incarcerated kind of boot camp treatment style program, but he's still in the same regional jail.
So spitball this for me, right? And get me back to where we started. $10-12 billion, a lot of money. Who knows how much is coming from other companies like Johnson & Johnson and Walmart and CVS and all these other places. Is that going to do it?
Well, I mean, a big bone of contention is how that money will be divvied up and when it'll actually get to these communities. I think it sounds like a lot of money, but it may not go as far as some of these communities are hoping.
Caitlin Esch, and a podcast that she and Chrissy Clark worked on last season, a lot of it in Wise County. It's called The Uncertain Hour. Caitlin, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Coming up.
This out-of-office gag has gotten a bit...
So, there's a few things here, because they were just talking about all these drug companies are getting sued due to, how they had represented their the drugs, opioid drugs. So Purdue Pharma makes OxyContin, which is an opioid, very commonly prescribed opioid medication. And there is no doubt that it is very, very addictive. I know my mom was going through radiation treatment, and they put her on opioids, and I said, get the fuck off of those. Don't take those. I was like, do medical marijuana. It has, many of the same benefits. It was a funny thing though. She wouldn't want to do, she's an older lady, she didn't want to do medical marijuana because there was a stigma around, pot, from her generation. Grew up very conservative in the 60s and 70s, and wouldn't want to do the medical marijuana. However, she would take these opioids that they were prescribing her, and just when someone takes that medication, they are fucked up. You get fucked up. You don't just, medication doesn't just take away pain. It does so much else to your body. The idea that, I think the more mainstream medical marijuana gets, the less likelihood that people are going to get prescribed, opioids. But it's a crazy thing. They were talking about how in the last 14 years, this county jail had, doubled or tripled in population from when it had, started. First of all, opioids have been prescribed since the 90s. Like she said, the guy got hooked on them in the late 90s. We've known about this for a very long time. And for them to be prescribed more, and then for Johnson & Johnson and Purdue Pharma, for these companies to be held liable for something that doctors are recommending to their patients, does not seem to be fair. In the end, instead of blaming these companies that are providing a service at these doctors aren't prescribing people this medication just because. They're prescribing them because when they give these medications to people, they're coming back and they're saying, yeah, I feel better now. This worked for me. A doctor's not going to prescribe a medication that's benign in its intent and full of downsides. They are going to prescribe things that they find successful throughout their practice, which has led to a higher usage of these and higher prescription rates of these opioids. If anything, why aren't the doctors being held responsible for this? Certainly they should have noticed their patients were going to jail, or that the patients, they couldn't legally prescribe them anymore, or they were putting their patients on restricted medication amounts, where you can't just get a week's worth, or you can't get a month's worth, you can only get like a week's worth. They must have seen these trends and understood these things, and to have over 20, 30, 35 years have this happening over that long stretch of time with only the prescriptions increasing, why would the doctors who are ignoring their day-to-day experiences with their patients not be held to account? Why are we only hearing this about through the court systems? Why is there not an active, there's currently not an active, contingency plan, or at least an effort to change this? Opioids are being prescribed at a phenomenal rate still to this day. And why, if we're having these kind of things where Johnson & Johnson and Purdue are not being held criminally liable, but they're being held civilly liable. That's why they're having to pay money, and people aren't doing jail time, things like that, or there's restrictions on their company. If it's not a criminal act, it's a civil act. It's hard for me to understand why the blame is coming for the people who invented this and sell this product that people are actively using. Opioids are bullshit. You should never use them. unless you're terminal. If you're terminal, maybe, if you are, terminal cancer and you are just SOL, there's not much reason not to. Making someone comfortable is a totally fine thing, but to prescribe people just getting like radiation treatments and these lower forms of cancer treatments and things like that, sure, I'm sure they're very uncomfortable, but in the end, this risk reward doesn't it get tilted in a certain direction. I would love, instead of just hearing about these dumb court cases where people are getting hooked on drugs that are legal to prescribe, are being prescribed because they're obviously effective, and instead of these states trying to get money back from the people who are abusing these drugs, why aren't we trying to push towards different types of medications? Why aren't we, why aren't doctors saying we need an alternative? It's because opioids are, and I know a doctor, opioids are the best. They are the best. It's a high reward and high risk. But if you can't hold, if you're not gonna take away these drugs, if you're gonna still allow them to exist, how on earth are you able to, financially hurt these companies? That's one thing I don't understand. But yeah, that was my little rant there on Purdue Pharma. Fuck Purdue Pharma, and fuck Johnson & Johnson. The fact that Johnson & Johnson knew that talcum powder had fucking asbestos in it, what cocks? Not to make it seem like I am defending these companies. I think that this is it's a cash grab, and that's about it by the state governments. State and local governments.
Because when you think about it, the library of instantly recognizable Beatles tunes is so big it's almost a language unto itself. Case in point, this next installment of our series, Automatic Reply. Some of the more creative ways that people say, I might not answer your email right away.
Hello. I would love to.
Help. I need somebody. Help.
But I'm out of the office. So. For a week. But don't worry.
It won't be long,
until I return. It's my son's 13th birthday, so the two of us left to drive my car on a road trip. 13 years old. It seems like just
yesterday.
He was a
little child.
I'm really excited and hope this trip is something he still remembers.
When I'm 16.
I'll be back in a week, but if it's something important, to call or text me on my cell phone. If you can
let it be, let it be, let it be.
Until I get back. That'll be even better, because things are likely to be a little bit this week. I'll do my best to make any outstanding assignments as soon as I can. Okay.
I've got a feeling
that this out-of-office gag has gotten a bit long. So this is...
the love you take is equal to the love you make.
Eric Robbins,
Song I don't know
a
about
lawyer
Beatles
in
right there.
Chicago. His actual out-of-office email, by the way, had way more Beatles references than we have time for here. You can check out all 49 of them and to tell us about an automatic reply that you have seen at marketplace.org. This final note on the way out today, being fully aware that foreign exchange trading can be risky. If you are headed to London anytime soon, the currency markets are your friend. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has asked the Queen, as you know, and she has agreed to suspend Parliament for a longer while than usual in September and October as Johnson tries to figure out Brexit. The deadline is Halloween. Negotiations have not been fruitful. A no-deal Brexit would be a big problem, and so currency traders sent the pound down to $1.21 and a bit this morning on the prorogation news. Before the Brexit vote, by the way, 3 years ago, a pound would have cost you $1.44.
marketplace is supported by Forex.com, committed to empowering and helping traders seize opportunities in currency markets since 1999. Forex.com, it's your world, trade it. Forex trading involves significant risk of loss.
All right, we got to go. Dow Industrials up 258 today, 1%. The Nasdaq up 29 points, 0.3%. S&P 500 up 18.6% there. Our media production team includes Sarah Bruguiere, Drew Jostad, Chip Peters, Daniel Ramirez, Jay Siebold, Charlton Thorpe, and Ben Tolliday. I'm Kai Risdall. We will see you tomorrow, everybody.
Just like every other day, any market news, it's only going to be negative. Only negative stories on the NPR News programming.
This is APM.
Planning to go to the fair? Check out our schedule of live broadcasts and performances at npr.org/state fair. You can find our booth near the corner of Judson and Nelson.
Yeah, the time now is 6:29. Partly cloudy skies around the state tonight. Chance of showers and isolated thunderstorms, mainly in the north. Lows in the 50s. Mostly sunny and windy tomorrow. Slight chance for showers or an isolated thunderstorm in the southeast in the morning. Highs tomorrow upper 60s in northern Minnesota, around 80 in the southeast. Clear for the Twin Cities tonight. Lows in the upper 50s. Sunny tomorrow and a high temperature in the upper 70s. Clear skies and 71 degrees at 6:30.
I think many people understandably were left with the impression that, within a few days, the Amazon was going to be reduced to a pile of ashes. But it's a far more complicated story than we've been hearing.
I fucking hate this.
I'm Michael
here.
Barbaro.
This guy.
That's coming up on The Daily from the New York Times.
Very liberal. That was New York
Live
Times.
from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dua-Lisa Kautau. Hurricane Dorian is gradually moving away from the northeastern Caribbean Sea. Earlier in the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, heavy rain and dangerous sustained winds were reported. Forecasters say Dorian is intensifying as it moves towards the east coast of Florida and could grow into a major Category 3 hurricane as early as Labor Day weekend. In Jacksonville, Florida, Mayor Lenny Curry says he'll be activating Emergency Operations Center tomorrow morning.
If we get to the point where we determine that there has to be an evacuation, there will be one of those events, whether it's flooding, down power lines, power outages, wind events.
Settlement talks to resolve more than 2,000 opioid lawsuits against Purdue Pharma continue today. That company is at the center of the nation's opioid epidemic. As North Country Public Radio's Brian Mann reports, Johnson & Johnson and other drug firms are also looking to cut deals.
A government source close to the negotiations confirmed to NPR Purdue Pharma was in talks with state attorneys general, a federal judge, and others at a location in Ohio. Published reports suggest the deal could involve payments of up to $12 billion and a bankruptcy process that would force the Sackler family to give up ownership. The same source said settlement talks with Johnson & Johnson are scheduled for Thursday. This follows a $572 million ruling against Johnson & Johnson in an opioid case earlier this week in Oklahoma. The company says it will appeal, but in an email to NPR said they are open to a settlement. Two smaller drug firms, Allergan and Endo, have reached tentative deals already. Brian Mann, NPR News.
Taking a look at Wall Street, the Dow closed up 258 points at 26,036, or up 1%. The S&P is up 18 points. You're listening to NPR News.
From NPR News, I'm Perry Finale. The Union for St. Paul police officers is protesting what it says is a dangerously light sentence for a man who threatened officers with a loaded gun. The union says a man answering the door of his home in January pointed a gun in the face of one of two uniformed officers. The Ramsey County Attorney's Office identified him in court documents as 31-year-old Assad Mohammed Ibrahim. Prosecutors say Ibrahim quickly went back into the apartment, then returned to the door without the gun. Prosecutors accepted a misdemeanor guilty plea from Ibrahim. St. Paul Union President Paul Kuntz today said the officers faced a situation that deserved a felony conviction.
One of the officers gave a victim impact statement explaining how frightened he was, believing he was going to be shot in the head and killed.
The Ramsey County attorney says Ibrahim did not know police officers were at his door at first, and that a prosecutor should not pursue a criminal charge if they can't prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. And Elk River man faces felony charges after...
Why give that shit little blip? People are going to talk about it. Two people sitting in a car are going to fucking talk about that shit. We have known nothing with the situation. We don't know why the police are there if they were supposed to be there. That was terrible.
Sheetrock screws. According to the criminal complaint, when deputies arrested Kayat, he produced a 5-pound box of screws that matched the ones found in the road. The complaint says he told investigators he threw the screws on roads near his ex-girlfriend's home to, quote, slow down her new relationship.
Love it.
Kayat is being held in Sherburne County Jail. The sheriff's office says it's likely he will face additional charges. Kirsty Marone, NPR News, Collegeville.
In sports, the Minnesota Twins and White Sox play Game 2 of a 3-game series tonight in Chicago. Clear skies, 71 degrees in the Twin Cities. It's 6:34.
The Daily is supported by Noom, offering a personalized weight loss program that uses psychology and small goals to help lose weight and keep it off for good. Learn more at Noom, Noom.com. And by Home Advisor, committed to helping homeowners find local pros for their home projects. Homeowners can get matched to pros, read reviews, and check project cost guides at homeadvisor.com or on the mobile app.
She has an interesting time with this dude's name.
From the New York Times, I'm Michael Navarro.
That guy
is The Daily.
Fuck the New York Times.
Today, more than 26,000 fires have been recorded inside the Amazon rainforest in August alone, triggering global calls for action. So why is Brazil's government telling the rest of the world to mind its own business? It's Wednesday, August 28th.
Through the prism of Twitter or Facebook, I think a lot of people last week, understandably, engaged in this communal panic about the fate of the world's largest rainforest.
Ernesto Londoño covers Brazil for The Times.
Urgent pleas to save the rainforest as the Amazon burns. Forest fires are raging in the rainforest. There have been nearly 73,000 fires this year already, a more than 80% increase compared to last year.
With international protests, the world is demanding action.
The French President Emmanuel Macron has described the fires as an international emergency.
You were seeing presidents, you were seeing celebrities.
And actor Leonardo DiCaprio working to help combat the wildfires in the Amazon rainforest, the climate.
You were seeing these really alarming posts and these photographs of patches of the rainforest on fire.
The smoke is traveling far and wide.
And I think many people, understandably, were left with the impression that, within a few days, the Amazon was going to be reduced to a pile of ashes.
The Amazon rainforest, the so-called lungs of the world, are now filling with smoke.
I think in many people's minds, there was a clear villain in all of this.
Directly blaming the record fires in the Amazon on Brazilian President
the president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, who has shifted his government's approach on the environment in a really dramatic way.
And scientists warn this could be a devastating blow to the fight against climate change.
And this is certainly a story about climate change, and it's a story about President Bolsonaro. But it's a far more complicated story than we've been hearing.
So, where should we start this story?
I mean, I think it's important to think about the history of the Amazon.
The great Amazon River of South America is so deep and so wide that the people of Brazil call it the River Sea.
I think for decades, the Amazon captured people's imagination in a way that few places on Earth did.
The tropical rainforest biome is a complex community exceedingly rich in many forms of plant and animal life. A showplace of natural history.
It was, this mysterious and dangerous place that drew adventurers and scientists and botanists.
Through ceaseless evolution, a display of flora and fauna has developed here unequaled anywhere else on land.
And, for many, many years, it was kind of these images of this raw wildlife and kind of the mystique that laid under the canopy that people were fascinated by. It contains the largest supply of fresh water in the world, and it's just teeming with biodiversity. But in the 1970s, the Brazilian government, which was then led by military rulers, decided it was time to settle this vast rainforest.
The conquest of western Brazil began in 1970 with the construction of the Trans-Amazonian Highway.
And it created a road that cut through the Amazon and started encouraging people to move there and to start making a living there. Their view was that the Amazon contained tons of resources, minerals, land that could be converted into farmland, and that it was time to turn it into an economic engine for Brazil. When it starts happening initially, people realize that things are changing, but there's no real alarm until a few years later when things get really out of control.
All that glitters may indeed be gold and beautiful once it's cleaned, but any short-term profits come not without a price to be paid.
Where trees start getting chopped down at a really staggering rate.
And that price is turning out to be high for humans and animals alike.
And people start realizing that the world's largest rainforest is being destroyed, is atrophying at an astonishing speed. This sparks worldwide consternation, and people start asking whether the Amazon might cease to exist one day if it continues to be destroyed at this rate. You had politicians, you had artists, you had songs about this.
The rainforest, the tropical rainforest. Now the tropical
It really became a cultural moment.
The balance of nature's like a delicate lake. We should have some compassion and show some concern, just the forest depends on what we learn.
People became very invested in this idea that everybody had a role to play in saving the Amazon.
Right, this is the Save the Rainforest campaign.
Yeah.
And does this movement have an effect in Brazil?
It does. But I think it's important to note that it is greeted with very deep skepticism and, to an extent, paranoia in some circles. I think there's long been a view among conservative nationalist Brazilians that all this outcry about the fate of the rainforest was really a veiled attempt to keep Brazil from developing its God-given potential. I think many Brazilians saw these calls to preserve the Amazon as infringing its sovereignty. And for many years, they were pretty dismissive about this, and they said that the fate of the Amazon was only for Brazil and its neighbors to think about, debate about, and decide on.
We'll stop it there because that's going to be a long segment there. That's true. Brazil, the Amazon is Brazil's. It's not ours, It doesn't mean we shouldn't be able to state our opinions on it, our hopes for how they would treat such a magnificent piece of just such a beautiful part of the world, I think the best thing would be is if we started visiting there. If we started, if their economies were more dependent on visitors, if people felt more comfortable going to Brazil and touring and made money in that sense, and Brazil was economically, if their pockets were involved in it, instead of just our offhanded wants and wishes for how they treat their country's natural resources, I think that would be the best way to go about it. They talk about number of fires. They don't talk about how much acreage is currently being burned. We don't know. There's no history on it. There are burnings that happen in it's like any other forest. Forest fires do occur. that's something I would like to get a little, maybe me and Chris talk about that on Well, That's Your Opinion, Man, this weekend here. Maybe a quick little blip on that, a tip of the topic. Guys, very much appreciate you watching, listening, following me on my way home from work. We will be posting again bright and early tomorrow morning. I have a hell of a phone call tomorrow, bright and early, and it's going to be a fun conversation. So I will be most likely uploading this junk I'm going to upload this video tonight, and I will have one for you in the morning there, probably around 9 a.m., assuming my phone cooperates with me. Y'all have a great night, morning, evening, afternoon, poop on the toilet, whatever you're doing, and I will see you guys tomorrow.